Hello out there. This is going to be the world's briefest talk on Hotwire. I'm going to start a timer here for myself. I'm Matt. I'm a developer from Toronto, Canada. This talk is for, I'm hoping to get, everybody can get a little bit out of it. So if you have little to no experience with Rails, I'm hoping there'll be some stuff you can glean for this. If you have some experience with Rails, maybe you're new to Hotwire, you'll get a sense of what this thing is. And with that, I'm not going to talk anymore about it. We're going to go make an app, spin up Hotwire, see what it's actually doing, modify it a little bit. And hopefully this will not be a disaster because live code is always fun. So let's do it. I'm going to create a new app. So Rails new, and I'm going to call it my Lightning Talk app. And I'm going to, got to do this. Database, I'm going to use PostgreSQL, QL. Okay, let's go. Great, and we're installing everything. Cool, I'm going to make this a little bigger so you can see my screen. And we're installing everything. This should be really quick. And when it finishes, I'm going to jump into this app and we're going to see what's going on. We're going to scaffold a model. We're going to see how Rails behaves by default. Just out of the box, I'm using Rails 7 Ruby 3 here. We've adopted Hotwire in production in Rails 6. It was pretty easy to do. It took us a day to kind of get it going, and it has been really great for us. But we're going to spin up a scaffold a model in our in Rails 7 in our new app, and we're going to see how it behaves out of the box, and then we're going to inject something called turbo frames to make it even more efficient, which is going to be really fun. So we're going to do that in a second. Awesome. What did I call my app here? This was much faster, by the way, when I ran it for my prep yesterday. Great, we're installing packages, my LT app, good. Rails is just putting all this magic in from the open source world. And this should be the last thing here. Okay, this is taking much longer than I expected or through my dry run. Okay, CD, my LT app, great. Okay, and let's make our database, or let's just actually start the server first. And it should give us a little error message here when we jump on localhost 3000. Yeah, no database error. Okay, so let's make a database. So Rails DB create, and this is going to create a database for us. And good, now that error message should go away if I refresh. Excellent, okay, we're going well so far. Now let's spin up a model. So we're gonna say Rails generate scaffold for a model that I'm gonna call a tweet. And that tweet is gonna have a user that's a string, and it's gonna have some content that's a string as well. And let's run it. Cool, so we get a bunch of things from Rails, and these are the usual Rails things that are scaffold. So I'm not gonna go too far into them, but I do need to migrate my database to add this new database table that Rails is going to do for me. Excellent, and then I am going to jump into VS Code here. Great, so I've got my project, and I now should have some tweets in here. So if I go to my app/tweets, I'll have my form here come up in a moment. There we go. And let me make this larger. I'm going to open up the dev console here too. And great. So we're off to the races. I'm going to jump into just take a quick look at my controller. So here's the vanilla Rails controller that we get here by default. We're really not going to have to modify this at all, but we are going to modify the views. So here I'm on the index action. And if I click to make a new tweet, I can do this, and I can say the user is Matt, and I can say hello world. And then I can click create tweet. But what we're going to look at is the results that come back. So when I click create tweet here, okay, what I'm getting back is I'm getting the entire page. And this is true. And you can see this when I make this larger. You can see this is true for almost all the requests. Basically, the way that Rails works out of the box is by sending, if we go look at the request itself, we're sending a fetch request in here. And I'm just going to hit refresh and show you this. So if I go back to another action, okay, so I can see that this is a fetch request when I look at tweets, okay? So it's an XHR fetch request, and this is coming from Turbo Drive. So Turbo Drive, which is part of Hotwire, is sending this and doing this automatically. And when I navigate around the app, so if I click show, you can see here's the show request. This was another AJAX request, a fetch request. So it's happening asynchronously, and we're already getting that optimization from Google Drive, which again is part one part of Hotwire. And if you're familiar with Rails, this is very similar to Turbo Links. It's just extended, and we're going to see how it's extended in a second. But the problem with this is that it's not particularly efficient. When I navigate all around the app, ideally, I wouldn't have to load everything in the head and all the other content on my page. I'm loading the nav bar again. I'm loading a footer again if I have those things. Really, what I would like to do is I would like to just swap out that part of the page, which is viewing the contents of the tweet. So ideally, I'd still have my nav, I'd still have my footer, which are obviously not in here, but I would just swap out this part of the form. And this is really easy to do with Turbo Frames. So let's do it. I'm going to go take a look at that show action on, so let's jump in. So I'm going to go and I'm going to jump in on the back end. I'm going to jump into that show action. And here it is. And so for me to do this, I just need to add a Turbo Frame helper tag, which is called Turbo Frame tag. Let me make this larger again. Turbo Frame tag. And this is going to be for the tweet. Then I'm just going to render the rest of my content in here. Excellent. Let's make sure I put an equal sign. And then at the bottom, I'm just going to end that tag. This is Ruby for people who may not be familiar with code. Sorry, Ruby, and excellent. And then I'm going to do the same thing for my edit action. And I just have to copy and paste that same code over here. This is how easy it is to get started with Turbo Frame. So let's paste that tag and let's save. Cool. And now let's go back to the browser and refresh. And disaster has struck. Turbo Frame tag. Hopefully Turbo Frame tag is undefined. Turbo Frame tag for tweet. What did I do here? That's in my edit action. Turbo Frame tag. This should be working. This is the classic. Why we love live code. Undefined method Turbo Frame tag. Why do we have that? I've got the docs up here, but this should be working. And let's just see if we are running the right version of Rails. Oh, we're on Rails 6. I've messed everything up. This is why it took so long. So we're gonna actually just skip this part. Let's try it Rails new, see if we can do it. And I don't think we're going to be able to do it in time. I'm already near the list of my limits, but I'm going to give you the TLDR. What happens when I put that Turbo Frame tag in here is I get the ID come back. This effectively just creates this HTML here. So it wraps the content that I have in my show action, which is all the things that I have highlighted here. It wraps it into a Turbo Frame tag. And then what Turbo does is it intercepts any links that we click on inside of that tag and sends a request to our server and only replaces the content on that page. And that is tremendously powerful because now we can have a whole app where we can break it down just by the parts of our page that we want to replace, and it makes everything substantially faster on the back end, on the front end. And that's really the essence of Hotwire. And just to, again, just define it out for us, because we haven't actually talked about it, but what is Hotwire? It's a collection of three things. It's a collection of Turbo Drive, which we saw replaces the whole page on the front end when we click a link. And that happens in Rails 7 by default. That happens right out of the box. And it also is Turbo Frames. And Turbo Frames allows us to just put this tag on, this Turbo Frame tag. And when we click on a link inside of this Turbo Frame tag, Rails will only replace that part of the page, which makes things extremely efficient. And the last part, which is amazing and where Hotwire really shines, is when you have Turbo Streams. And Turbo Streams swaps, adds, or removes part of the page, but it does it via WebSocket. So there's no refresh necessary at all. And Hotwire is a combination of these things, which happens all without having to write any JavaScript, which is tremendously appealing for a lot of use cases. And the last part, which is outside the scope of this talk, is Stimulus, which is a tiny little JavaScript framework for writing little sprinkles of JavaScript where you need it. And Strata, which is coming soon, which will allow writing these web applications in a way that they can be deployed natively onto front-end applications. So very quick TLDR. So how does Hotwire work? A user clicks a link. Turbo Drive intercepts that HTTP request. It sends it via AJAX. The server responds with vanilla HTML, and it replaces all of that page or a portion of that page if it's wrapped in a Turbo Frames tag. And that is it. And I think I've hit my 9 minutes there, so I'm going to stop talking. Thanks, everyone.